Hola, mi gente bella. I'm excited to be here today. And honestly, I was not going to do another episode because I felt like I missed the full moon in Aries. And I did a lovely, lovely interview with Ana Lopez, and something was bugging me. And what was bugging me was that everything that I see online in general around the full moon in Aries during Libra season is all about, placing ourselves as top priority. Be careful, don't fight and argue because it's a tight situation. There's a lot of tension. We have the North Node, which is our destiny in Aries, and then we've got the South in Libra. So it's all about balance because it is the season, right? It is the season, balance season, to like really look at ourselves and see where we've given too much and not enough to ourselves. These are all appropriate. These are all correct. These are all themes that are true and real. So I am not, saying that astrologers out there or folks out there don't know what they're talking about, because absolutely it's on point. Está correcto. But let me tell you, what I've been dealing with in my life, what other people have been dealing with in their life. And also, what I love about the natal chart is that the more you look at it, I've been looking at it for decades, people. I learned the language of just like the signs, watching TV as a little kid, como muchos de los Latinos, a lot of us Latinos. Walter Mercado would come on, everybody, shh, shh. So I learned things like, ooh, Tauro, stubborn. I learned all that. I learned the basics. But in 19, I actually learned the language where I could read something and be like, look at somebody's Venus and be like, oh, you look like this, but this is how you get your needs met. This is what you really need in love. And your energy level is like this. And you process your information and your relationship with your mother. And so, needless to say, now for decades, I've been reading my own chart. I have been working with the moon and like planning when I put out resumes, when I go on dates, when I do certain things by the moon cycles. Now it's become popular in the last, I don't even know, 5 years online, but I've been doing it for a long time since I'm a youngin. And it bothered me. So it bothered me because I was like, wait a minute. The full moon in Aries, of course, there's more wars coming to be seen. There's more bloodshed. There's a lot of things happening. And it's during the Libra season that asks for peace, that asks for balance. There's the collective strife, right? And then there is the personal strife that each and every one of us is dealing with. The issues that we don't talk about, the issues that we do talk about. And then there's the subconscious stuff, which, I'm a queen of. Not only do I do hypnosis and read soul records, but honey, if any of you know that the 12th house is the house of the soul, right? That's where I have my moon, my sun, my Mercury. All the main personal planets are literally in the house of the soul. So, of course, with all that, I had to sit down and be like, okay, let's look at this. And as I sat down and as I look at it, I saw that because the nodes are in Aries, our destiny, North Node in Aries. We have all been invited to really assess the balance where we overgive. And we've also been asked to step into more independence, right? Owning our beliefs, especially women, especially BIPOC Latinos, right? But everybody, because it's a collective thing. But for those people who at some point felt like it wasn't safe for them, right? Because I mean, I know tons of white women who don't feel that it's safe for them. But for a lot of us who are immigrants who've come from other países, other countries, or other cultures, we've literally like either been punished or something has happened to us, right? And so this North Node, which is our destiny, inviting us to step more into our own desire, into our own leadership. Then with this full moon coming in, all full blast. But then we've got the sun right opposite it, going, it's like this. Hold on, hold on. Let me do this because I like to do it because, I like to play. So you got the sun in Aries. I mean, the full moon in Aries. You got Chiron right next to it, which would probably be, this invisible asteroid right there. And then down here, we've got Sun in Libra and we've got South Node. South Node is where we've been before, the areas that need to be healed so we can step into our power. So we've got all this, and please, size is not a thing right now, maybe in other things, but not here, no aquí. So we've got all this, there's this tension, right? And when I looked at what was in tension besides the sun, which is what everybody sees, and the moon we only see sometimes, we see that the energy of assertion and the energy of people pleasing is at the heart of this lunation, at the heart of this astrological event. But it goes further and deeper because Chiron is in Aries, which is the wounded healer. I'm going to talk a little bit about wounded healer, and I want to talk a little bit about Lilith. But what I want to say is, I might get emotional during this episode. Y'all might get emotional. I really don't know. But if I can say what I really want to share with all my heart, and I hope that I can, and I've sat here and cleansed the space, and I want to light a candle and really invoke that to come through, is that this full moon really is about patriarchy. Yes, it's inviting us to speak up, but it is about the patriarchal militaristic energy that continues and pervades all of our existence, not only in war making, not only in oppression, but also in our individual lives, right? Because everybody's like, oh, believe in yourself, go out there, do your thing. But do you know how many people, women I've worked with, and even in my own life, what happens when we truly, truly go out there and do our own thing? Now, I don't want to invoke this. Let me clean this a little bit right here. I don't want to invoke this with negativity to further entrench this mindset, right? Because I'm a healer of mindsets. I'm a healer of the invisible realm. That's what I do with hypnosis and the medicine work that I do and the energy healing work that I do and the readings that I do. But we've got to call it out in order to heal it. And so I want to talk a little bit about the different, players in this play. And then I want to go a little deeper because the theme of today's episode is really about, the invitation to self-actualize. It's the top of the Maslow's pyramid right there, right? So when I was in my 20s, I had a boyfriend who was really working hard. He'd just come in from another country and he was like going to an Ivy League and like busting his butt on Wall Street. And he's like, you're so interesting. You don't have your money set straight. It's not like you're fully stable. I had like 2 jobs and I did readings, right? But he's like, but yet you're trying to live at the top of the pyramid. Goes, don't you know? He said to me, we work to get the food, to get the housing, to get this, to get that, to get this, to get that. And then we get the self-actualization. Then you see the retired people singing karaoke and like being on ships, right? Why does it have to be then? Why do I have to work so hard to take care of my rent and my home and all the things and only enjoy life later? And so I said to him, well, my self-actualization, I mean, as long as I have a roof over my head, I mean, I lived alone. I said, I work 2 jobs and I do readings and hypnosis on the side. But I said, I don't have to wait for all these things to have self-actualization. And I can say that in my 20s, I thought I was on my way to self-actualization. I had a divine connection with spirit and God, not one where I thought, well, if I'm good things will happen, because that's what Christianity and a lot of the Judeo-Christian religions teach you, to keep you tame, to keep you down, to keep you inspired and hopeful. But do you know how many people have sat there on this other side of the Zoom and cried to me? I've gone to this, I married a virgin, I did the work, I did all the things, I was a good person, and yet my partner cheated, they took my money, I owe like so much money, this is what's happened, they took my kids. The idea that if you do 1 + 1, it will equal 2 is just bullshit. Now, magically, we'll talk about that separately, right? The idea that we've been told, well, if you work really, really hard, you're going to get ahead. Well, you might. A lot of the hard work that I've done in life has actually helped me get ahead, but not the way that I thought that it would, not the way that I thought, the way I was told that it would. I wasn't going to get ahead, I didn't get ahead in corporate, right? In fact, a lot of the departments shut down and I wound up getting laid off, which then invited me to be who I truly am, right? Which was, by the way, really hard and also really amazing. But there are a lot of lies that are out there that have caused a lot of trauma and a lot of pain. If I pray to God this amount of times, if I follow these rules that God has given me, or society has given me, or the world has given me, that I will get this at the end of the road. And for so many women, it just isn't. There's so many women who work with me who are like, well, I was a good mom and I was a good wife and I put up with the in-laws and I did this and I didn't listen to my intuition. I didn't listen to myself. I did all the things that I had to do and I am now dying inside. Now, there's a lot of people who might be listening to her like, mira, mujer, look, I did the things and I'm happy with my life. And I'm so happy to line for you. You know, I didn't do all the things. I didn't do all the things because as a young person, seeing my mom do all the things and yet not get what she was working for, right? Very shaky relationship with my dad in a foreign country as an immigrant with 4 kids and one with heart issues where he was getting surgeries and such. I observed these things and I said, damn, being quiet does not help you. Aguantando does not help you. And I made a decision at a very early age that I knew I could draw and I was talented, so my creativity would save me. My spirit would save me, above all, my relationship to God as I spoke to God. And I knew, listen, I was praying to God to get me out of there and I wasn't taken out, but I still believed. I still believed because I heard, like, this is part of your journey. This is part of what you're supposed to do. You will get out someday. And so what wound up happening is I made a quick decision as a young person, or maybe not so quick, that my intelligence, my creativity, and my spirituality is what would save me. And over my life, over and over and over again, and I mean, I've had good people in my life and good friends. I've had some, partnerships that really cared for me, et cetera. And I have good people now. But what I have found over and over again, as opposed to a lot of other women who expected somebody to save them because they were raised that way, that I always thought I had to save myself. And so therefore, because I always knew and thought that I had to save myself along with God, right? And the universe and the spirit, that while I was disappointed and sad in people and things, I was like, well, I trust myself. But this is not something that our society and our culture wants. And so when I talk about the full moon in Aries with conjunct Chiron, right? With the Chiron, the wounded healer conjunct, we are hurting. We are hurting from the effects of patriarchy. It's affected our men, it's affected our women, it's affected our people in so many levels beyond just war, but also war within, war with each other. You know, because of patriarchy, women have thought, I've seen my grandmother give up acting and performing, and my grandfather then feeling bad. She gave up a huge chunk of herself in order to be married, in order for her family not to pressure her. Due to patriarchy and the expectations of women, I saw my mom, she told me the story. She was a journalist in Argentina and in Peru and Bolivia. And then she got a call that they'd seen her on TV from California. I think it was Univision, that they're like, look, we know your mom and you have kids. One week a month, come to the Univision, right? Come to Univision. Let's record stories. Come in to be one of our broadcast journalists. My mom asked my dad, who was like, leave, you're a woman and a mom. He's like, well, we have to get somebody to take care of the kids for that week. And, it was going to be a good amount of money compared to her staying home and taking care of kids for all of the weeks. They asked my grandmother, my other grandmother, who also didn't get to do or be who she really was. She was a psychic medium. My grandfather had her in circles. I didn't know this till before my uncle died, reading for free. And, I think you guys know my history, that I was reading for free and then also just doing circles for free for years. I didn't even know I was following in my grandmother's footsteps. But she was a psychic medium. She was a healer. But in her upset of, well, I didn't get to do what I wanted, she decided, as an agent of patriarchy, but not knowing it, right? Because we all become like the goddess Athena who popped out of Zeus's head, right? And a lot of the Greek and Roman pantheon representing so many of the situations and relationships. But Athena popped out and she was always a force, though I love her and I have a statue of her somewhere. She was an extension of the male energy of patriarchy. And just like that, my grandmother, who had suffered and been oppressed by machismo, right, turned around and oppressed my mom. And so she said, I'm not going to take care of your kids for you. And so if we think about How many, and there's some amazing grandmothers that didn't do that, right? So like my grandmother's like, go out there and do your thing. My other grandmother, I couldn't do it, but I hope you do it, mija, right? I hope you do it, mi niña. But there's so many of my clients and students who are suffering because their mothers went through trauma and their grandmothers went through trauma, being oppressed by machismo, being oppressed by chauvinism, being oppressed by patriarchy. And then unknowingly, they then passed on that oppression. And that happens also Latin America, the islands, and nuestra cultura latina with colorism, with racism, with homophobia. People get oppressed and they turn around and they oppress, right? Like, oh, you have good hair, you have this, or you have that. Or if I had that skin color, I wouldn't tan, all the things that are colorism. And so I ask you that during this full moon, I don't want your whole life to collapse and I don't want you to blow up your life, right? But to question yourselves a little deeper. There's a reason why so many women are so fatigued and so exhausted. There are so many women that I see online or that I've worked with over the last 30 years that, or let's say 28 years, that give so much. And it doesn't even matter what cultura they come from. They could be Italian, they could be Irish, they could be Ukrainian American, they could be Latina, they could be African, wherever they're from. They're so exhausted because not only have they stepped out into the workplace and have to carry, right, part of the household or, at least, or all of it sometimes as single moms, but then they also have to be on top of all the things at home with the kids, have to be the great wife, have to be sexy, have to cook, have to do all the food. Now, there's a lot of different setups out there, so not everybody's going through that. But I'll tell you that when I went to Panama 10 years ago, when I was, I'm location free, so I was living there, how many women told me that they felt the pressure and they were gorgeous and they were accomplished, right? I'm talking about middle class women that I met there and they had to look a certain way and they were doing their Pilates and they were running to pick up their kids. And if they didn't have a cook that they would oversee, they were cooking the food. Everything had to be just so. They had to look a certain way, go to church, do the thing. Women have unjustly carried the burden of our community and our society. And, I'm not saying anything that any of you don't know. And by the way, a lot of people tell me I have a mama energy, at the energy. I am totally a nurturer and a lover of people and men and humans and animals. But that's why I wanted to have this conversation because there's so many tiny little ways that so many of us are still under the thumb of patriarchy. And I'll share real quick with you. I didn't want to get married because I didn't want to go from my home to a man's home. I didn't want to get married young. And I was proposed to by great people that I loved because I also wanted to find out who I was. And I didn't want to find out who I was as an extension to a man, to a partner, to a husband, But on the other side of that, while I wanted to explore and become who I was, the assumption, just want you to know, the assumption from some people that I dated at times, or even my parents, oh, you need to fuck around. And the answer is, and so what if it was that? That wasn't the main reason. And so you see the double standard of men wanting to being able to do whatever they want to do and how they ever want to do it. And the minute that a woman doesn't want to get married at a certain time or do a certain thing that someone has told us we need to do, suddenly now we're like depraved sex fiends, right? Or locas or crazy bitches or howling at the moon. Do you know what I mean? And especially in the area that I'm in, being the biz bruja, like I was raised in spirituality. This is not something I do, this is something I be, right? It's something I be that I wake up and speak to spirit. When I go into really sad moments of my life, I don't have a separation between me and spirit. That's when I like burrow into the heart of spirit. That's when I like go into the roots of my existence and stay there, trusting that the cycle of grief or sadness or loss is going to carry me through because it is the path, it is the way. It's not like, oh, I lit the candles and I did the crystals and it's not working, which if you're going through that, that's fine. I ask you to burrow deeper. I ask you to go to the roots, right? This is what I do. This is what I be. And I know, some people are like, well, what I be is a mom and what I be is a wife and what I be is this. Beyond our relationship to other people, who are we as women? Beyond our relationship that is defined by a chauvinist patriarchal society that only gives respect to a woman who's married. Let me tell you, I went to so many parties when I was younger, and I'd be like the only single woman or with a boyfriend. and other women kind of pulled their husbands away from me. I wasn't doing shit. And I was there with a couple of amigas who were also single. We're like, yo, what's happening here? And so it was weird, and it's not necessarily Latinos that were doing it, but it was what was happening. And then I remember meeting women who were moms. And I mean, I have friends of all types now who have kids, don't have kids. But when I was younger, almost being the threat because I was this independent person who was living alone since I was 21, living my own life, creative, directing a play, but having two jobs, doing readings, doing the things, dating this person. When that didn't work out, I ended it, I moved on. That was not something that in general was accepted, whether it was in my Latino household, whether it was in other households that I saw. And not everybody has to live like me. But for anybody out there, let's say you did follow all the rules and then you got divorced at 30, 40, 50, or 60, and now you want to date or you want to travel or you want to find out who you are people shaming you? And if so, they have no right to shame you. These are remnants of the chauvinist sexist society that we're all raised in. And there's so many elements of this. As somebody who has a big chest, there's so many times that I question myself when I go out there. Is this too deep of a V? I don't want to look like a boo. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what I was taught and raised. Oh, I don't want to look like slutty. I don't want to look like this. I don't want to look like that. But I'll see my skinnier sister with little boobs and they're rocking the deep V. And oh, well, I can because I don't have all that. And now I see so many young women with no bra with the deep V's. And I'm like, go with your bad self, right? Where is it that like one body type can do something that another body type can't? And you may not agree with me, but it's like, oh, freedom for only some people, freedom for only some people, only some sexes, only some genders, only some ages. And I do not believe in that. And so let's go a little deeper. I took some notes because this is a big topic, but I want to share something else as somebody who stepped out at the age of, right, 21. And I was already supporting myself, living on my own, doing my own thing, even living in a different state. My family went down to Miami. They freaked out that I didn't want to move with them. It was a whole thing. It was the whole thing. It was really hard. And it wasn't like if I was struggling, I could call my family and get help. I didn't, right? I'm truly, truly a very self-made person, really self-made, with spirits, love and help, but truly self-made. And not that that's better or worse from somebody else who got a lot of support and help. Like, God bless you if you got that. Everybody's journey is their own. I know that I'm self-made to be the person that I am, to teach and hold space the way I do. I can hold space for such a range of people because of what I've been through. And you, as somebody who've gotten support, can be that support for other people too, because you know what that's like. Breaking the patterns of not supporting the child that doesn't do what you want it to do, right? And so everybody's doing their own work and everything's different. But I'll tell you this too, and I ask, you know, I heard when I went to Improv Utopia this summer, which is an improv camp. I was talking to a man of color who was Latino, and he was saying to me, my wife and my daughter don't want to do improv. They don't like people looking at them. They're just not like that. And I sat there and I said, is it that they're not like that? Or were they made fun of at work or at school at some point? Did they ever stand in front of an audience and feel put on the spot and somebody made fun of them or hurt them, and maybe they were even betrayed? And he sat for a minute. He's like, wow. My wife said that she didn't need the bullshit and she didn't need the catty comments from women. He said when I asked her, at one point when he was talking to her, and that his daughters were like, I'm sick of, the bitches talking about me. And so I'd rather be. So for a lot of Latinas, we've hid in academia, we've hid in the corporate world. A lot of us have sometimes moved away from, and not all of us, I'm just talking about some of us, from our sexuality, being wacky and crazy and doing wild things like, I don't know, acting on stage, singing, doing all the things, not for a career, but just for fun. And we have to ask ourselves, those traumas and those experiences then make people say, well, I don't do those things. But is it really you that doesn't do those things? Or is it because you've already been hurt before that you don't want to try new things? Right. So I said to him, I want you to know that for people of color, it's like double and triple harder to get on stage because white folks always feel that it is their privilege to get on stage, especially white men, right? And some, there's always rarities and there's white men who are not like that. But in general, a white man has had a lot of the rights in most of the world, or a lighter man, and in this country. And, then white women who also sometimes get scared and all that. Like we all get scared. But there is a hierarchy that's been happening in the world. There is systemic racism, right? And so it doesn't surprise me. And I said to him, well, I hope you can have this conversation with them that just because it happened before, it doesn't mean that it's going to continue. So that's another way in which oppression, chauvinism, oppression has kept some of us from doing certain things. I worked with a woman once for many years who I saw her start out her business. And we worked together and we did the healing, we did the past life regression, we did ancestral healing. And when she started to get really, really successful, and meanwhile, she was not happy in her marriage. While she started to get really successful, she shocked me almost overnight. I mean, she was starting to get covered in magazines, etc., making money. It was like she dropped everything. She dropped her website, she dropped everything. And the reason was that her husband was threatened. And he started to treat her weird. The marriage became even more unsustainable. And I said to her, but this is a way out. This is the way out now. You're successful in your own right. You can support yourself. Your kids are getting older. She's like, I don't want to take that on. I am a Mrs. And that's what I need to survive in this life right now. And so that's her own decision. That's her own sacrifice. But, and we cannot comment on who stays with whom for financial, for moral, for religious reasons. But I wanted to create this podcast and have this, even if it's this sided conversation, I'd love to hear from you because I wanted to bring it out to be seen. The full moon is about bringing things out to be seen. And I can say, people say, even my aunt said to me the other day, she said, and what does your husband say about all this? That you were just in Los Complicados, you were on stage, you were running things, you're on the fringe, you're in this, you're in that, you're creating this, you're so visible. And I said, well, what can he say? We split the bills. He doesn't support me financially. We met older in life. We don't have kids together. He knows who I am. I know who he is. But the thing is, though, that there's still moments where he's shared where me being so visible can feel that way, right? And so that's a real thing. I have a lot of people in my life that I know, whether they're friends or colleagues or clients, who've quit performing, who've quit dancing, who've quit going out with girlfriends, who've quit rising in their profession, who have quit spiritually healing because they're like, if I keep spiritually healing, I'm going to leave this man. So I better stay in the Delulu. You know what I'm saying? Delulu is the Salulu, they told me. I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, I can't keep growing spiritually. And so this is a real thing. This is a real thing. And, I was calling it this, it's like the glass ceiling that we have in companies. I feel like we also have an invisible ceiling in women's expansion, in women's growth, that if it is supported or accepted by family or partners, whether they're male, female, whatever gender they may be, that it's okay. But when we start to get close to outgrowing ourselves and going to the next level of our spiritual growth, of our financial capacity and wealth, whatever it may be, our sexual satisfaction, that sometimes in this misogynistic, patriarchal world, that the oppression arises. Okay. And that's why this full moon to me was like, I wanted to put this out there. I want to invite us, ask yourself even now, who would I be if I could be anything? And money and what other people thought, el que dirán. I mean, who invented el que dirán? It wasn't women. Okay. It was like religious people who are going to drag your ass in España or Europe or South America or everywhere and like torture your ass because you're a witch or because you're too sexy. I mean, remember the things that they call women when we're too much for them is a witch, is a prostitute or, sex worker or whatever, which nobody should be put down. Una puta, right? Una loca, una bitch, puta loca, all those things. And when we see men getting an award for this Oscar or whatever, Oscar may be too high. Let's look at something else. Being a Renaissance man, we're like this. Not only is he the pastor of the church, but he is selling paintings at 30,000 a pop. And he runs, marathons, and he does this and he does that, and he writes a column in the newspaper. We're all applauding. El hombre que hace todo. But with women, when women are all that, which we generally have to be, by the way, we generally have to be. We're taking care of the kids, we're making sure the home is going, a lot of us, not sometimes the men do that, but sometimes we're the leaders of that. We've been trained to do that. A lot of us are, breadwinners of the whole thing, or at least most of the thing. And we're trying to get ahead with our business and our careers. And a man changes a diaper, he's an amazing dad. Meanwhile, the woman was changing them every day. And so these are the things that we've been dealing with. And I think they need to be brought out. Let's get in here and talk about the astrology that made me talk about this, because it's really important for us to really look at this, because I think that, so the guide, before we go in, I had said to close our eyes for a moment and breathe. Who could I be if I could be anything? And I didn't care about society said, what my parents said, what my family said, what my kids said, what my husband or wife said, right? Is there more for me that I want to explore? And to explore that without shame. If you're like, yo, I'd be hanging off the chandelier having like amazing sex in a group scene. Hey, go with your bad self, right? Whatever it is, that's yours. It's not to be judged how you express yourself. And unfortunately, we're often seen as an extension or a reflection of the man. So my aunt asked me that. And then somebody else said to me, well, how do the men in your family see you when you're belly dancing? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't ask them. I was single when I belly danced. I'm sure my dad didn't like it. I don't care. But so many of us do care, right? And so asking, who would I be if I could be anything? And then taking another breath and asking, is there something that I'm holding back from doing or being or feeling? Because I'm afraid that if I stepped into that unbridled creativity, unbridled expression, unbridled sexuality, unbridled whatever, magic, personhood, witchy self, lo que sea, your brujita self, that I would be rejected and that I would have issues in my relationship, my marriage, or with my family. Is there something that I am holding back from? And taking another breath. And allowing yourself for a moment to imagine that you are living that thing, that part of yourself that you really wanted to live out. Whether it is, I don't know, learning to pole dance, or starting a business, or coming out with your brujita self, whatever it may be, or asking for the open relationship. So breathe that into your body. If I ask, well, we don't need permission. If I stepped into the thing that I really want to be and feel and exist, what's on the other side of that? And notice your body. Notice if there's a tightness in your chest and your head and your eyes, how you're feeling. Notice how you're feeling. And taking another deep breath in and asking. And of course, we're doing this all with our eyes closed. I kind of jumped ahead. And asking, what do I most need to know about the thing that I'm putting off because I'm afraid of the impact it'll have on the stability of my life and my home and my relationships and my family? What do I most need to know about the impact of actually being, doing, and feeling the thing I want to be, do, and feel? What do I most need to know? And then gently just opening our eyes. And so some people might say, oh, if I could, I would take time off and travel the world. I would do this, I would do that. I want you to write it down. Write down What would you do if there was no barrier or feel or be? Because it's not about doing only, it's about feeling, right? And just being. The second one, what would be the impact if I actually live this and be this and feel this? And I just want to say that, now all the rage is having a business, doing all that, independent, contractor, all the things, online marketer, witchy person. When I first came out, people thought it was hot at first, like people when I was dating. There's several people who broke up with me. They rather go out with a school teacher who is a stable salary. Do you know what I mean? They're like, oh, when I thought you were a teacher, I thought you were a teacher. I said, I am a teacher online. You know what I mean? And I didn't care. I was like, next, próximo, because that wasn't for me. If they couldn't see the vision and they couldn't see, you know, why I didn't fit into the regular expectations, they weren't for me. So it's hard. It's hard because a lot of us already have set up lives. We're already in a relationship or married or have kids. It's like, well, we can't just throw that out the window to be who we want to be, Vanessa. But what I want to invite you into is actually facing it, addressing it, actually saying, okay, yeah, this is true. I would love to do this, and I'm not going to because my husband will go crazy, and then I don't know what I would do in my marriage. To allow yourself to just stay with it. There's nothing you have to solve. There's nothing you have to change. But allowing yourself during the energy of this full moon in Aries that invites you into to greater independence, that invites you into greater balance between Libra and Aries, that invites you into healing because South Node is in Libra, healing our over giving as women, healing our over compensating, our over nurturing, our over watching out for others instead of ourselves, and tapping into the shadow work that is needed to heal that wild part of you that is Lilith, the part of you that is secretly back there, because it's in Libra right now. And so the shadow is that you're sometimes overgiving and being really sweet. What's the other side? What if you didn't do all that? What if you, quítate la máscara, right? It's a song. I think it's a salsa, and I'm not telling everybody, let it take off the mask and freak out. But where are you playing nice? And I'm not saying to play mean, but where are you playing nice where the time's up already? Where is it already not serving you? And that's at the heart of what I see this moon is really bringing into lunation because of Chiron, the wounded healer, because of Lilith there in the south. It is asking us, how have we integrated this patriarchal structure? And how are we now being asked to face it in our own lives? We don't have to change it because maybe the system is set up in a way that now you can't. But how can you become more aware, start moving towards healing, and maybe dipping a toe to let more of that shadow be healed through just awareness, right? So I hope it makes sense. I think it does. So I want to talk a little bit about the different things I'm talking about because being an astrologer for so long, I don't want to like babble and not really have you understand. So I want to talk a little bit about Chiron and Aries, which I did talk about. Chiron and Aries, the wounded healer, is right there now, right there with that full moon in Aries. And it represents a unique blend of healing and challenge. And it's related, as I said, to identity, individuality, leadership, assertiveness. Chiron, often referred to as the wounded healer, it symbolizes our deepest wounds and the potential for healing through those wounds. In Aries, this energy manifests in many different ways. And I want y'all to know, all of y'all to know, that my Chiron's in the 10th house of career and self-expression and being seen, right? It's right there next to my Venus. So it's like, woo, my identity as a woman in the world and in the career. And so a lot of the ways that I've healed my own leadership. And trust me, my dad, when he realized that I was a big mouth that was going to tell him about himself as a little kid, I got punished and smacked and hit and all these things. He was like, oh my God. He literally did say, no one's going to marry you when you grow up because you have a big mouth and you have big opinions. And I was like, a mí no me importa, right? But not everybody's like that. And so one of the ways that I've healed those wounds with my father wound and my Chiron was to really trust myself, to really be my own leader in my business, to really be like, I'm trusting spirit, because I also have North Node in Pisces there, spiritual, to step out, to step off the cliff and fly. And everything good has come from me personally risking, right? Risks mean different things to different people and also have different lessons for different people. So don't just listen to this and be like, that's it, I'm quitting my job and jumping off a cliff, please. So One of the ways that Chiron and Aries manifests is identity and self-expression, right? Individuals may struggle with asserting their identity. They may have experienced wounds related to the sense of self. They may be really strong, powerful, badass leaders inside, but then they kind of self-betray when it comes to the promotion at work, speaking up, because they know that if they do, something bad might happen. And they may be too scared to risk what could happen, right? The impact of their actions. This happens to a lot of us because we are taught not to do that. Don't shake the boat. It also can come out as courage in action. There may be lessons around taking initiative, having the courage to act on one's desires, right? On one's leadership ability. People with Chiron and Aries might face fears around taking risks or asserting themselves. I would say anybody who has Chiron and Aries, and also in general for the collective who are dealing with this energy, it's not waiting around to be picked. I don't care if you're a projector, okay, in human design. Um, Not waiting around to be picked. Choose yourself. Know that you're already that expert. Know that you already are amazing. It's not just about exterior validation. It's about you validating yourself, stepping out into the world, and the world validates you. I know that's easier said than done. Trust me. That's why I'm somebody who's done therapy, EMDR, continues to work with healers, and continues to work with my relationship. It can be really tough, even if you're a go-getter, to assert and protect and like step out when we've seen so much negativity coming out of speaking out, right? So, displacement can also indicate a tendency to experience conflicts internally or with others that challenge your sense of self-worth. Como, ¿quién te piensas que eres? Who do you think you are to start a business online? Who do you think you are to be a single mom? Who do you think you are to get on an improv stage? Who do you think you are to have male friends? Who do you think you are to start pole dancing? Who do you think you are to quit your job and think you're going to create an at-home business? Who do you think you are to start working after being home for 20 years? El qué te piensas que eres, all of these things come up around this Chiron and Aries energy. Empowerment. Ultimately, Chiron and Aries encourages us to find our personal power, to embrace our uniqueness, right? And to heal through our own self-acceptance and bold action. Let me tell you guys, if I had $1 for every time there were some experts or people who told me not to take an action and I did it anyway and it was successful, I would have a lot of money. But that's just me, right? I'm a psychic medium. I hear my spirits. And so when experts and others tell me stuff that conflicts with my inner voice and my guidance, I still do it, even though I'm a little terrified. And it always comes out well. Do you know what I mean? But we have to build that relationship with our intuitive knowing. So we realize that the risks that we're taking, the bold actions that we're taking are not based on ego, are not based on like attitude or revenge, or they'll see when I make it, all the things. It's really about the inner voice that's aligning you to your higher purpose, aligning you to who you're meant to be in this world, right? There are lifetimes where we are meant to raise 10 kids and focus on those children. And then there are lifetimes where we're not going to have kids and our fur babies are going to be our kids, right? I was just talking about myself, but do you know what I mean? It's like there are different lifetimes and there's different stories and there's different journeys for each of us. No two people's journey looks alike. Embracing your own and being the leader of your own and embracing your own place in the world. Now, Lilith, let me tell you about Lilith. Could be like, I don't know why Vanessa's talking about Lilith. I heard about Lilith Fair or I heard about something in the past, but I don't really know what she's talking about. So let me talk a little bit about what this energy is. So Lilith is in Libra right now. But the story of Lilith varies across cultures and mythologies, right? She's mostly known from Jewish folklore. And I'll give you a little bit of an overview, right? In some interpretations of the Genesis creation story, Lilith was the first wife of Adam. That's how I know her, created from the same rib or soil as him. Unlike Eve, who was created later. Oh, okay. Yes, because I took these notes. She was created from the same soil as him. Eve was created from his rib. Lilith was seen as an equal. Now, Lilith refused to submit to Adam and demanded equality in their relationship. When Adam insisted on traditional roles, Lilith chose to leave the Garden of Eden rather than conform. This act of defiance made her a symbol of independence and empowerment. So, what I heard, back in the day, as I was studying and learning astrology and just learning all these astrological symbols and stories and archetypes of female empowerment was that she didn't want to lay under Adam, right? She didn't want to lay underneath him missionary style. I think she wanted to be on top. I mean, that's what they say. It seems like a good story to tell, right? But it was an act of defiance. Like, no, I'm the man, I get on top. So she left the garden, but after leaving the garden, I mean, the PR specialists probably zoomed in and were like, oh, we have to see what we do with her. Of course. After leaving the garden, Lilith was demonized in texts. She became associated with darkness and chaos, sometimes malevolent forces, often depicted as a figure who preyed on children or seduced men in their dreams, taking away their power through the sexual act. Right? So think about it. A woman just says, no, I don't want to lay underneath you. And now she's a demon. I mean, and it's like in Genesis. So, how does that impact all of us? We carry the Lilith wound. You know what I mean? And so, that's my own name for that, by the way. That was just born right now. So, you've just witnessed it. So, in modern interpretations, Lilith has been reclaimed, right, as a symbol of strength, sexual autonomy, and the struggle against patriarchal constraints. She represents the aspects of womanhood that defy societal expectations. And that's why I do love Lilith. Her story serves as a powerful story and narrative about autonomy, rebellion, the complexities of feminine identity, and also the story of what happens to us when we don't do what daddy says, right? And daddy can mean literally daddy or daddy in quotation, quotes. Um, and so that's part of what's happening here. Right now in the skies, this push pull, heal your leadership, but also know that your shadow is that you've been tremendously hurt when you've stuck your head out. And so, how do we find that? So, what happens when, I have a friend right now who's doing really, really well, and suddenly she's not feeling well? This is not the first friend. This happened to me as well. In 2022, I was like interviewed like 10 times on TV. A lot of you may not know, but one of the top four publishing houses approached me about writing a book. I had gone to LA, to El Latina, then I was taking people to Peru. And there were some things that happened in my life that really kind of had me wanting to hide a little bit, right? It's like we hit this invisible barrier that I was talking about, and that it often leads to self-sabotage, right? And so typically when we get there's these limiting beliefs that we're carrying, but they're not just from trauma and what we saw or like inherited ancestral trauma. They're like, because in Genesis, when Lilith says no, when she actually says no, she's now like a demon soul sucker who like eats children or devours the souls of men. And so, do we want to be seen as the whore, the bitch, the slut, the demon, the witch, all of these things? I mean, a lot of you are like, see, I want to be seen that way. Obviously, me unconsciously, I kind of stepped into that. Lilith is in my first house. And so, even when I've been shy or quiet, it kind of like is there. And so, I know I've talked so much about this, but what I want to hold are special healing sessions, and they'll be an hour. And, usually my rates are 275 for the hour, but I want to offer this particular session, and it's being born right now, by the way. I'm going to do it for $150 for the hour. It's $125 less than my usual session. And I'm going to call it Healing Lilith, right? It'll be shadow work. So if you're interested, that was just born now. See how I go with the flow. I'll put the link in so you could book it. And again, it will be $150 for an hour healing session. It'll be energy, hypnosis, and maybe intuitive work as well. And that's why I think I was called here beyond that, is to bring the light to what's really happening. It's not just about, oh, honor yourself. It's like, why aren't we honoring ourselves? Why are we afraid to honor ourselves? Why are we holding back from ourselves? And what's happening that we hit this invisible barrier, whether it's in our career? And let me tell you, when we hit this invisible barrier of negativity, anxiety can happen, depression can happen, this almost shutdown energy can happen. And we start to negative talk ourselves, right? And we're like, I don't know what happened to me. But suddenly, you know, it's like, I don't know, I don't know. But it's your mind and your brain and your soul protecting you, because sometimes on the other side of success, and what I mean by success, I'm not talking about money. I'm not talking about, having the three babies you wanted or all that. But success to me means feeling really good with ourselves. We're not going to be happy every day, but we can be grateful. We could look at the journey and say, wow, all of it was worth it, even though some of it sucked, right? And that's what success means to me. That soy una mujer hecha y derecha, which is what my mom taught me, even though I didn't follow everything she taught me, really, because some of it. Um, and I wanted to share a story about that in a minute, but know that anxiety can happen. Suddenly we were doing really great on our workout and suddenly we pulled back. Because what's at the other side? So many women have said to me, well, I don't want to look hot because I'm afraid I'll leave my partner. I'm afraid I'm going to get hit on. I'm going to have problems with my husband or my wife. People have said that to me. We can feel suddenly like imposter syndrome, feeling like a fraud, even though you're so successful. And that's this invisible barrier. Because to jump over that barrier and keep flying and leave like the garden, and it's not no Garden of Eden, but it's the garden of protection of patriarchy, which says, if you follow these rules and you're a missus and you're these things, you'll be safe, or at least safer than other women. When you're going to break out and be an artist, or you're going to break out and do other things, or start a business, or be a bruja, well, there's a price to pay. And so in these healing sessions that I want to offer, we're going to set up a new mindset. Let's create a new energetic pattern that says, no, I don't have a price to pay. Even though I'm in a patriarchal system, I'm going to attract the aligned opportunities, the aligned people, the aligned clients, or the aligned support for me to grow into those spaces that are still growing in the shadows. They're still taking root in the shadows and eating me alive, eating me up alive in some way. Um, and I'm going to bring it out into the world. So if you feel called, let's do that. And it'll be called the Lilith wound sessions. And know that sometimes when we start to procrastinate, there's this great opportunity, this great thing to do. And then we start to procrastinate, right? And so let's identify our negative sex talk, our negative self-talk. And that's, well, a negative sex talk too. Mala, mala, mala. Right? But let's identify our negative self-talk, our negative sex talk. Let's and we could go even deeper on the sex talk for a minute, like the Madonna the whore syndrome. We're talking about a man wants you to be, or a relationship, a partner may want you to be a certain way in the outside world, but you better be wild and do all the things. We've been dealing with this duality for so long, and can't we just be ourselves? Can't we be sexual when we want to, when we feel called? Can't we also run a business or not, or raise 4 kids and run that kitchen as a kitchen wit bruja and do the things and heal our family and do it the way we feel that we want to do it without this oppressive, ancient mofo energy hanging over our shoulders, right? So we have to challenge these self-limiting beliefs. We have to question the validity of our sudden negative thoughts, of our sudden anxiety, of our sudden depression that stops us in our tracks and doesn't let us move forward. Because sometimes it's just our inner self not wanting to face what happens when we dare to be an embodied Lilith energy. And let me tell you, when we take those risks, like sometimes our self-expression is going to inspire people, and sometimes it's going to trigger people, and it's part of it. And all of it is medicine, right? That's a quote that's out there. Practice self-compassion, right? Be kind to yourselves, accept that life is life, and then also get professional help when you need it. And so I hope that this has supported you. I hope that, the tension that's really happening here, not only is it collective with the world, but it's also an internal fight. It's not that goddess is taking over completely, but it's that basically patriarchy the roots have to be burned down. In other words, we have to release the sexist crap that is really happening, and we have to allow ourselves to be all who we are. And in order to do that, we have to face age-old, ancestrally, deeply rooted trauma, patterns, mindsets that say things that are not helping us thrive in this life. Así que, mis queridos, I hope you've enjoyed this. I am so happy we got to talk, that I got to share with you some thoughts. I would love to hear what you think. If you're interested in the Lilith healing sessions, let's talk about it. Like I said, 150 for the hour session. I have to go create it now before I share this online. And know that we got this. We just have to talk about the elephant in the room. We're not demonic because we want to claim our sexuality. We're not terrible or evil because we're filled with life and love. And that who we are in our existence is not in relationship or isn't defined by men. So I'm sending you mucho, mucho amor. It's defined with our own inner self, with our own inner divinity, with our wise and well ancestors. I ask that each and every one of us that hears this, including myself, be given health, abundance, courage and strength, and gentle grace, compassion, and wisdom in order to manage the currents of the astrology that are unfolding right now and those tensions that are overwhelming. Mucho amor, take a bath, do a cleanse, heal your house, heal yourself, y seguimos adelante. Mucho amor, mi gente bella. Let me know what you think, and let me know if you resonated with any of this. Los quiero mucho.